This is The Wrap on Aging, and I'm Rob Entz, your host with the Utah Commission on Aging, broadcasting from Scope Radio. The Wrap on Aging explains public policy, education, and research that informs and empowers older adults. This podcast was produced by the Utah Commission on Aging in partnership with Utah Legal Services and Adult Protective Services under a grant awarded by the Office for Victims of Crime, the Office of Justice Programs from the U.S. Department of Justice. The opinions, findings, and conclusions or recommendations expressed in this podcast are those of the contributors and do not necessarily represent the official position or policies of the U.S. Department of Justice. Today's conversation is part of an Elder Justice series sharing real-life stories to help you better understand how to protect yourselves and your families, where to find resources and help, and how to report a crime. Our guest today is Alan Ormsby, State Director for AARP in Utah. He also has a law degree, which training helped him and his brother untangle a Ponzi scheme that was perpetrated on his grandfather, Robert Miller. Grandpa Bob.
Grandpa Bob.
Tell us about your grandpa, Alan.
He really was a wonderful, wonderful man. Very smart, very thoughtful, had been successful in his career. And when he retired from working as a vice president for a chemical company, he had time and he had some funds. And he used it to help people who were doing some work to rehabilitate apartment complexes. And while he was healthy enough to go down and work on those apartment complexes and see the work that was happening, it actually worked out pretty well. But as soon as he got sick to the point where he couldn't go and physically check on the work that was taking place, it all unspooled and he was taken for a lot of money.
Over what period of time did that occur? From the time he was able to start lending money, actually being able to observe it, and then drop back from that activity?
About a 10-year period. So he started investing in the early 90s, and by about 1998, he had a very bad fall. And it was at that point where he couldn't really walk much anymore, and he made the decision that he wanted to not be in his home, so he went to an assisted living center, and it was really at that time that they really started bleeding him dry.
So there was a period of time where trust was established.
Absolutely, and for a while he made money with them. I mean, like any Ponzi scheme, right? When the initial investors, the way a Ponzi scheme works is the initial investors see money coming back, and he was actually seeing money coming back, but it wasn't real.
And so it's not by chance that the perpetrators spotted a moment of vulnerability.
That's exactly right.
When you can no longer keep oversight and watch.
Yeah. As soon as he was not able to go down to Texas, he was a pilot and could fly his personal plane down to Texas and check on things. And as soon as he wasn't able to do that, that's when it really started getting bad.
How did your grandpa meet Paul Jacobson?
So Paul Jacobson is the person who stole from my grandpa, and they met through mutual friends at the Lions Club in Holiday. My grandpa was a terrific, he believed in philanthropy, easy for me to say, and really did think that these people were okay. And had, as you said, built trust with them over the years, and was completely, I think, blindsided when they started really stealing from him.
So as this rotten event started to unfold, how was that discovered?
So in about 2000, I was just getting ready to graduate from law school, and my brother, who is named Brett and works in construction, he was talking with my grandpa, and my grandpa was very agitated and frustrated. And he said, I need you, Brett, to go down to Texas and see what's going on in these buildings. These people who I had lent money to keep asking for more and more and more, and I've given them plenty to be able to actually rehabilitate this project, and they keep asking for more and more and more. And so that was the first any of us had heard about this. And, to back up a step or two, he was now into the Jacobsons about $3 million in cash and several $1 million in property that he had given up as well to help them facilitate other loans. And they really hadn't done anything to this project. They had taken the money and spent it on other projects and put it back into other people that they were trying to then manipulate into giving them more money. So when my brother went down there, he found they really hadn't done anything with his money.
You're listening to the Rap on Aging podcast from Scope Radio. I'm your host, Rob Entz, with the Utah Commission on Aging, and today we're talking about preventing financial exploitation of older adults. We're talking with Alan Ormsby, State Director for AARP in Utah, about a Ponzi scheme that ensnared his grandfather, Robert Miller. There's 6 Ormsby brothers.
That's exactly right.
How'd that work out?
Well, yeah, my family is a big family. We're very close and tight-knit. I'm really, really grateful to my brother Brett, who he runs his own construction company, and he kind of put his life on hold to be able to go down to Texas and manage these processes. I was lucky enough that, as I said, graduating from law school, so I was able to put some time and effort into helping facilitate all of the legal wrangling that we had to do after discovering this Ponzi scheme. And it was extensive.
So Brett is your older brother.
Yes.
Is he the oldest in the family?
He's not. So I have an oldest brother, Roger, Brett, Dean, me, and then Wayne and Brian.
Don't quiz me on that.
Right.
So describe what happened when Brett actually went down, I guess at the request of Grandpa Bob, to check on the properties in Turtle Creek near Dallas.
Yeah. So what he found was that this project could have been a fabulous success. It's in a gorgeous area of Dallas, probably the nicest area of Dallas. It was an older condominium complex that had run into disrepair, and if the people who did this, Paul Jacobson and his family, had actually spent the money that my grandpa had given them to rehabilitate this thing, it could have been a great success. But my brother got down there and discovered, well, what have you done? It's been now, like I said, $2.96 million in cash, and there were 1 or 2 apartments that had then been rehabilitated so that they could show those off, but the other 30-ish hadn't been rehabilitated in any way.
So, Alan, how did you engage the legal system to help in the recovery of money for your grandpa, and how did that work?
Well, so one of the real complexities to anyone who has been scammed getting anything back is there's both the criminal side of things and the civil side of things, right? So the civil engagement that we did, we went out and hired attorneys, and we aggressively went after the Jacobsons, and we were successful on the civil side in winning a judgment of about $4.5 million, which is great, but it's really difficult to collect any of that. These guys are pretty sophisticated in hiding their money, and Paul Jacobson declared bankruptcy. And when he did, the debt, luckily because it's based in fraud, it carries on past bankruptcy, but they're really good at hiding their assets. And so, we haven't been able to collect much, if anything, from him. And then the criminal side of things, it's really challenging because you've got a bad guy in Texas and the victim in Utah. And these are very expensive crimes to prosecute successfully. So the bad guy in Texas, the folks in Texas don't want to do it because the victim is in Utah. And the people in Utah didn't want to do it because the bad guy's in Texas. And so he was never prosecuted criminally.
So, Alan, you've talked about some of the challenges of prosecuting across state lines. Isn't it true that jurisdiction can also be a problem even within a state, just across municipal lines?
Yeah, absolutely. These cases are very difficult and very expensive to prosecute. And so if you've got DAs and other folks who have thousands of cases that they're thinking about and trying to prosecute, these cases tend to fall towards the bottom of their priority because they are so expensive to prosecute.
You're listening to the Rap on Aging podcast from Scope Radio. I'm your host, Rob Entz, with the Utah Commission on Aging. And today we're talking about preventing financial exploitation of older adults. We're talking with Alan Ormsby about his grandpa Bob, who had been a very successful businessman and extremely intelligent gentleman who trusted a man named Paul Jacobson. Bob had met Jacobson at a suburban Salt Lake City Lions Club. What was your grandfather's initial reaction with all of this?
It was really hard to see. My grandpa has always been a gentle man, a gentleman, really smart, really thoughtful, and this just put him over the edge. These people who had been people he trusted, people who kept asking and asking for more and more and more, and I think he felt really embarrassed that he hadn't got any help earlier and had given them so much, and then to come back and find out they had done almost nothing with his money, it made him physically shake. And it's something I had never seen from my grandpa. He wasn't the kind of person that would raise his voice or get red-faced, and this just put him over the edge.
What did he say about Jacobson before he died?
He said, if I had a gun, I would shoot the man. And that just broke all of our hearts, because that tells you the level of anger and frustration that he had. It was beyond anything I had ever seen.
Sorry to hear that. So this is a sad experience for the whole family. How has that affected the lives of your siblings and others as they think about preparing and protecting themselves?
Yeah, it's been in some ways really good. My mom just recently got one of the fraud calls, a pretty sophisticated call. The caller knew that my brother Wayne, who is a doctor, has a medical practice, and this caller said, you know, your son Wayne is in real trouble, and if you don't get some money to me, then I'm going to have to report him to the medical association. And it scared her. It scared her enough that she picked up the phone and talked to me, and I was so grateful that she did, because that's the issue. You know, when people have these scams, we often say to ourselves, how could anybody be so dumb as to get caught up in these scams? First of all, I want to say anybody who does get caught up in a scam, it's not because they're dumb. It's because they are concerned and thoughtful and worried about something, and they get in this moment of being heightened emotionally, and then our decision-making falls apart. And thank goodness she had the wherewithal to say, well, let me pull this back just a little bit and call. I know my son does this. I was really grateful that I work in the field of aging. And so she called me, and I talked her through it and just said, where was the call coming from and what were they asking for? And of course, they're asking for, you know, money in the form of gift cards. And I said, there's your dead giveaway. This isn't a real thing. But she was so scared because how did they know that my son was named Wayne? And how did they know that he had a medical degree? Well, all of that's public record. But a lot of older folks don't realize that so much is out there on the internet, and that's how scammers are taking advantage of them.
There's a whole behavioral science studying around the psyche of perpetrators and who they target, not just vulnerable adults like the grandparent scam that we talk about occasionally, but also individuals who are type A, who are very successful business individuals who are looking for that opportunity, who tend to trust, who tend to be aggressive. And they are smart people, and there's no discrimination about age. There's no discrimination about intelligence. They're very, very smart about who they attack. Alan, you talked about the impact that this incident had upon the lives of your family members, extended family members. Tell us a little bit about how this affected your career choices.
Well, the episode with my grandpa really brought me to the field of aging. I was working as an attorney in private practice and was enjoying that. But there was something that struck me about how if my grandpa could be defrauded out of all of this money, how many other people are being defrauded, how many other people are being harmed. And it really pushed me in the direction of wanting to do service, be a public servant. And so I worked as the director of the Division of Aging and Adult Services for a while. I was the director of the Division of Services for People with Disabilities. And then I've been really blessed to come work for AARP. I've been here almost 8 years, and I've loved every minute of it. And working for older adults is just an amazing opportunity, and I've loved every minute of it.
The Utah Commission on Aging encourages all of you of any age to visit our site and check out your local Adult Protective Services, Adult Legal Services, and Department of Justice websites, Federal Trade Commission, lots of resources on the web. Alan, you happen to work with AARP. They also have a great deal of resource available to people. Talk a little bit about the Fraud Watch and other resources available through your organization.
Yeah, so anyone who is interested in this, they don't need to be a member of AARP. They can go online and look up the Fraud Watch Network. I tell people just Google Fraud Watch Network, or they can go to fraudwatchnetwork.org, O-R-G, and you can sign up to be a member of the Fraud Watch Network. You can get information about all of the latest scams that are out there. You can also get an 800 number where if you are wondering if something is a fraud or a scam, you can call that, and there are people there to help you say, let's walk this through and see if this is a scam. It's a tremendous resource, and we really hope people will take advantage of prevention because, as you heard in my grandpa's case, we spent $600,000 on legal fees, and we've recovered about $120,000. So despite the best efforts of a family to go after these fraudsters and win, you're never going to collect much. So avoid it.
That's a staggering and sobering comment, but it's a very important one. We both know that we have very dedicated individuals in Adult Protective Services in our state who work tirelessly and want to hear about crimes that are being perpetrated so that they can get the resources to investigate. But you said something at the end that's so important. The best is the prevention. And the more we can do to educate individuals and help them protect themselves and to speak out, as your mother did, to seek help when there's ever a question or something that just doesn't sound right. If it's too good to be true, it is.
Absolutely.
Well, thanks to our guest, Alan Ormsby, and to the Office for Victims of Crime in the U.S. Department of Justice for creating the opportunity to share these stories and provide resource information to our communities. And thanks to you for listening. If you have any questions about this issue or suggestions on topics you'd like us to talk about, please send an email to utahaging@gmail.com. Remember to check out our website and other podcasts at www.ucoa.utah.edu and follow us on Facebook. I'm Rob Entz, Executive Director for the Utah Commission on Aging, and this has been The Wrap on Aging.